As Nicodemus leaves his home, he tries to tell himself that he's waited until dark because the streets have been so crowded. But the truth is that he's afraid of being seen with the one he's going to see. Because Nicodemus is well known in Jerusalem. He's a member of the Sanhedrin, the supreme court of the Jewish people. And many of his colleagues are set against Jesus because they fear he may be attempting to start some sort of rebellion. They worry that even the slightest uproar might bring the whole fury of Rome down on their heads. But Nicodemus isn't sure. His whole life has been spent drawing clear boundaries around everything in order to make life make sense. And he doesn't know quite what to make of Jesus. He's curious. So he set off into the darkness to ask Jesus, "Who are you?" He finds him on a rooftop overlooking the city, and Nicodemus suddenly realizes he doesn't know how to address him. So many people have been calling him a lunatic, a heretic, a traitor. Nicodemus settles on, "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher from God. The things you do, the miracles, there's no other explanation." The look in Jesus' eyes stops him short. It's similar to the one that parents give their children, that bemused look that says, "You have a lot left to learn." When my son Finn was 3 years old, I walked into the living room to find him flipping through picture books on the floor and planning the next day aloud. "Tomorrow, I'm going to play with my castle, and I'm going to take a nap, and read a book with Daddy, and eat a Pop-Tart." And I was struck by just how small his world really was. Another time, about a year later, shortly after we had told him that we were moving from a very sunny and warm place to Chicago, he wandered up to me, and he had heard from somewhere that Chicago was chilly, and he asked me, "Dad, what does chilly mean?" And I thought, "Oh, buddy, you're about to find out." As kids, we used to get that look all the time. The one that says, the boundaries of your world are bound to get so much bigger. But Nicodemus is one of the most wise and intelligent people in all of Jerusalem. He's a teacher of others. He hasn't been made to feel like he has something left to learn in a very long time.
Nicodemus, if you hope to learn what God is really up to, you'll need to be born again.
Born again? How do you expect me to become a newborn?
You're the teacher, but you don't understand?
Not really, no. And then Jesus really confuses him.
Like Moses lifted up the snake in the desert, I'm going to be lifted up. And whoever puts their trust in me will be saved.
Saved? What? Jesus is referencing a story from thousands of years earlier. Moses was leading God's people from Egypt to the land that he promised them. And as they crossed a vast desert, people were bitten by snakes and many were dying. So God told Moses to fashion a bronze snake on a long pole and to lift it up among all the people, and anyone who looked at it would be saved. And Nicodemus knows this kind of strange story, but he can't quite piece together what Jesus is trying to say through it. And before he knows it, the conversation is over. Nicodemus had come with just one question. Who are you? But as he hurries home, his questions are growing exponentially. But this much he thinks he's been able to piece together. He'd called Jesus a rabbi, a teacher. But Jesus isn't claiming to be a teacher. He's claiming to be the Savior. And Nicodemus wonders, what if I believe him?
What if you're right and he was just another nice guy? What if you're right? What if it's true? They say the cross will only make a fool of you. What if it's true? What if he takes his place in history with all the prophets and the kings who taught us love and came in peace? But then the story ends. What then? But what if you're wrong? What if there's more? What if there's hope you've never dreamed of hoping for? What if you jump and just close your eyes? What if the arms that catch you by surprise? What if he's more than enough? What if it's love? What if you did? Way down deeper than your simple-minded friend. What if you did? What if you find 1,000 more unanswered questions down inside? Yeah, that's all you find. What if you pick apart the logic and begin to poke the holes? What if the crown of thorns is no more than folklore that must be told and retold? But what if you're wrong? What if there's more? What if there's hope you've never dreamed of hoping for? What if you jump and just close your eyes? What if the arms that catch you by surprise? What if he's more than enough? What if it's love?
With each passing month, the crowds around Jesus are growing. And the people seem divided between those who adore him and those who wish they could ignore him. But in this room, there's little disagreement. The Sanhedrin, these men who make up the highest court, the respectable rulers, they feel as though they must protect the people from being deluded by a madman. It doesn't hurt that by eliminating Jesus, they're also protecting their own power. Jesus must be silenced by whatever means necessary. On this, they're united. Except Nicodemus. He has this feeling he hasn't been able to shake since that night on the rooftop. Their conversation had hardly made sense to him. And yet he has the sense that there's something to this man, Jesus.
He's been careful to keep those thoughts quiet. They're all waiting. Guards that they've sent to arrest Jesus should be back any moment. And Nicodemus hopes that it's not too late, that their minds aren't entirely made up. He hopes he'll still be able to ask Jesus, "Who are you?" The guards are empty-handed. The room erupts. If there were ever a moment for Nicodemus to speak up. I attended a pretty small elementary school. In my grade, it was roughly the same 40 kids divided into 2 classes every year. And I think a lot of us spent our summer break hoping that come fall we wouldn't be in a class with Caleb. Worse still was if you ended up with an assigned seat next to him. Our teachers had to assign seats because nobody would willingly sit there. His desk was always overflowing with papers and other trash, and it wasn't just his desk that was a mess. It was his hair, his clothes, his hands. When the teachers would return papers, they were always careful to make sure his was face down so that nobody could see. But everybody knew. And between the whispers in class and shouts at recess, everyone made sure Caleb knew exactly how they felt about him. One afternoon, we were reading aloud in class, each kid taking a paragraph up and down the rows. And when it came to Caleb, he stumbled and he stuttered over every word. And he hadn't even finished a sentence before the whole class was giggling. And our teacher tried to shush us, but soon it was all out laughter. And I knew that I should say something. I knew that what was happening wasn't right. Because I was always the good kid, the nice kid, the kid that anybody could be friends with. But in reality, I wasn't any of those things. Not if I couldn't be what I most needed to be. When we're given the chance to say something and we don't say anything, saying nothing says everything about us. Nicodemus knows that if he doesn't say anything, he'll be betraying what he's beginning to believe. I started curious about who Jesus is, about the nature of this man who's so mysterious. I don't know who he is, but what I know is this: the situation is becoming very serious. They want to kill him, make him suffer for his fame. They'll crucify him and I'll be the one to blame. But if I speak, I'll be the one that they condemn. What then? I'll lose it all, I will descend, can't comprehend. What then? Just try and think it through before you go and do a thing that very well could spell the very end of you. But don't be squeamish, Nicodemus, speak your mind. Try to leave you second guessing all behind. Though maybe I should try to stay a little cautious. Hold back a bit because I feel a little nauseous. But I'm so furious about these spurious charges that are hideous, made by men delirious, by power I started curious about who Jesus is. But I'm inclined to think he might be who he says he is. Gentlemen, tell me when we became the ones to end and condemn any man without us ever hearing him.
Nicodemus' heart beats wildly. Nothing in his life seems to make sense anymore. He's always prided himself on being in the right, but what he's witnessing, he can hardly see past the huge crowd that's gathered, but he's desperate for a glimpse of Jesus, as if seeing his face one more time might suddenly make his world make sense again. And then he sees him as the cross is lifted up into the air. And he remembers Jesus' words.
I'm going to be lifted up, and whoever puts their trust in me will be saved.
And he suddenly understands. Jesus saw this moment coming. He knew it from the start. And he loves so deeply that he did it anyway. And Nicodemus is finally convinced. Jesus isn't a lunatic or a heretic. He's not even a prophet or a teacher. He's exactly who he'd claimed to be from the beginning. He is the Savior. In horror, Nicodemus wonders, what have they done? Everything he spent his whole life building, all of the ambition for position, for prestige, for wealth, look what it's accomplished. And then he remembers something he'd found so confusing so many months ago.
Nicodemus, you'll need to be born again.
Maybe he can begin again. Maybe that's exactly what Jesus had been promising. But just as he feels that his own life is truly beginning, he watches as Jesus breathes his last. He no longer cares who knows. He doesn't care who sees. He boldly asks to be given the body of Jesus. He and another man carry Jesus to a nearby garden where one of them owns a tomb. And as they begin the dirty work of preparing the body for burial, Nicodemus uses a mixture of a spice called myrrh to bind within the linen cloths they wrap around Jesus. And the mixture weighs almost 75 pounds. It is worth a staggering sum. At the hands of Nicodemus, Jesus receives a burial that would be the envy of kings. And then as the sun begins to set, they place Jesus' body in the tomb. And Nicodemus looks down at his hands that are now covered in Jesus' blood. And he tries to comprehend how this could possibly be the end, not knowing that the best is yet to come.